You're listening to The Real Short Box, a comic book podcast made for geeks by geeks.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for coming out and listening to The Real Short Box. My name is Donald.
My name is Dr. Kevin.
And I, once again, am Darren.
And we are here today. We're going to be talking about some exciting stuff. Now, we all know that there is a lot of comic book movies out there. Basically, especially Marvel, they were comic books first, and then they became movies. We've seen a lot of this happen. A lot. But what about when it's in reverse? Yes, we're talking about today properties that were movies, television, cartoons first, or even pop culture phenomenons that eventually then became comic books.
Mm-hmm. Now, this is an interesting dichotomy to me, and the reason that I say this is because were it not for the motion picture, the comic book would not have been inspired. You know, you would have not had the ability to have comic books necessarily be made because the movies made, you know, comic books are like, oh, let's just draw one kind of picture at a time or one shot at a time. And in many ways, it kind of gave birth to the modern day comic book. But as the movies started struggling, the comic books actually have saved the movies in many respects. Mm-hmm. And could that possibly flip back around? We'll have some ideas later in the show for movies we think would make outstanding comic books because we want comic book readership to go up. That's why we're the Real Short Box.
Absolutely. Yep.
You know, Darren, I love your use of vocabulary. Using the word dichotomy is so awe-inspiring, sir.
Well, that's why they call me Darren the Educator, and by they, I mean me.
Yeah, well, you know. All right, so who wants to get started on this? Who wants to dive right in and talk about a title that they know for a fact was something besides a comic book first?
Well, real quick, I'll just mention the A-Team.
Really?
What?
A TV show that we may not have fully understood, but we did understand that. Great action with Mr. T. Mm-hmm. Actually, B.A.
B.A. Baracus. Let's not forget Face.
Oh, man, Face was awesome.
Hannibal. Of course.
I mean, you can't go wrong there.
You could easily mix up, too, Hannibal and Hannibal King, you know, Ryan Reynolds from Blade 3. I always want to call Liam Neeson's character
Hannibal King, that's true.
But not the case. But now the crazy South African Dutchman, I can't remember the character he played. It wasn't Murphy or it was like a generic name.
Murdoch, you mean?
Murdoch, thank you. The pilot.
Yeah, the pilot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I loved Murdoch. Murdoch was my favorite.
Of course.
In fact, and I know I probably mentioned this before, but there was 2 comic books that were in the house when I was a kid. So this was how I was first exposed to comic books. Mm-hmm. There was 2 on the bookshelf. One of them was the Blue Beetle.
Okay.
It was a modern comics reprint publication from the 70s. Okay. It was Blue Beetle number 3 with the Madmen on the cover. And a lot of pen that my sisters apparently traced because they're stupid.
Ha!
And, sorry.
Desecration.
Is that sisters plural?
Yes.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah,
So both of them desecrated the book.
I don't know which one it was, to be honest. It's probably Diana. But I'm not going to throw her under the bus just yet. I'll wait 10 years. She'll be frail. No. And then... basically, the other comic book was the A-Team, and I think it was issue 2 or 3. It was one where B.A. Baracus was fighting a sumo wrestler on the cover.
Oh, nice. That's awesome.
Yes.
Was it E.
cool.
Honda?
I don't think so. No.
That would have been amazing.
Pretty sure it wasn't, but
I know Street Fighter. That would be pretty cool if it was E.
No, because this would have had to been way before.
It would have been before.
That. Yeah, this was in the 80s.
Yeah, Street Fighter didn't come out. Well, Street Fighter 2, when we introduced those characters, they come out like 91.
Right.
Could we please have fact checkers make sure to find the first appearance of E. Honda? Anyway, as you were saying, Donald.
Yeah, so that was those were the 2 comic books that I was introduced to, and it just so happened that the A-Team, if you still watch it, it holds up actually surprisingly well. I watched the pilot. It's like an hour, maybe a little bit longer than that. It was a little bit longer. Could have been close to an hour anyway, but it was a good, solid episode. They were getting the team together and everything, and it was very enjoyable. So A-Team still holds up. It's a very good series, and I could definitely see how that would have been a comic book. Yeah. And surprisingly, almost right away, really.
Yeah, Marvel Comics, yeah.
Yeah.
Within like a year.
I guess I'll throw one out here real quick then. I'm gonna go with. Do you guys remember? And I'm not talking about the musical band, but the Crash Test Dummies.
The Canadian rock band, but not them.
Not them. No.
If I recall, aren't there like those two dummies where you would see like a car accident? It was like some kind of public service announcement.
Yes.
They're very memorable.
Yes. Slick and Spin.
Slick and Spin.
Slick and Spin were two of the Crash Test Dummies. They even did a parody of that in Stay Tuned with John Ritter.
Yes. Oh, it's a classic movie
Where
with Jeffrey Jones.
Right, where he got he was using the remote control and he got onto the channel where he was in an episode where they were, or a commercial where they were testing a car and he was one of the Crash Test Dummies. And then he had to get the remote to work before, he rammed into the wall.
Listeners, would you do us a favor? Go in the comment section and find us a screenshot of Dwayne's Underworld from Stay Tuned.
Party time, excellent.
That might be a third movie.
I don't know if I want to see that. The second one was not good.
Okay.
I like the art in this book, by the way.
It's solid. This comic is by Harvey Comics, actually. Came out in 1993. Basic premise of this story, to start out with, is the president has been kidnapped. By who, you ask? Junkman. The villainous man made out of spare parts.
Which, by the way, I commented to you earlier. He looks a lot like Hordak from She-Ra.
He does look a lot like Hordak.
And look, when a car crashes, there's a lot of junk being left behind.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense.
Symbolism.
So basically, the interesting idea about it is that there's a doctor. Dr. Zub is the guy that basically puts the Crash Test Dummies back together each time and figures out, their inventions and stuff. So it's kind of cool in that way because he's, the mad scientist.
Looks like Dr. Wily from Mega Man.
A little bit, yeah. So he kind of explains how he accidentally may have created Junkman. And I'm going to just read it real quickly. He says, "It was built by Junkman. To think that I accidentally helped to create the most notorious force for evil in the world. I was trying to create the perfect robot body, the Torso 9000. But a faulty evil head was mistakenly attached." And it shows the janitor holding the evil head, and he goes, "Yeah, this one must have fallen off its body." And Junkman was born. So basically, that's the whole story of his origin.
So are you telling me that this is not only the first appearance of Junkman, but Dr. Zub as well?
I believe so. And also, most likely, the first appearance in comic form of our two heroes, Spin and Slick.
Dare I ask?
They're unkillable, aren't they?
Kind of, I guess. I guess if you smash their heads in, they would die.
Dare I ask how long this run may have lasted?
Oh, shoot. I don't think more than a couple issues, to be honest. Let me
Sad.
double check.
Yeah, no, and that's interesting because that's like a topic I really want to delve into for movies that get converted into comic books. There's a lot of brief runs of these comic books. They're almost like collector sections, like 2 books, 4 books, 8 books, or they do get a run of like a year and they just don't catch.
That's true. They'll catch on.
Yeah, and so
it doesn't really say here how many issues it ran for. I'm gonna guess 9.
Okay,
that's a solid guess for a comic book that doesn't have any fan base.
Oh,
now
poor dummies.
Womp, womp.
Do you mind if I transition over here?
Go for it.
Okay, so here's what we're going to do. This is kind of a thing that I really liked on our last show that we did. Donald just kind of grabbed one of my books and just opened it up and gave his first reactions to this, because I'm going to hand that to him. Ooh. I'm going to hand this one over to Kevin.
Okay.
Now
issue 2.
This is Dark Crystal, based off of the movie. You guys
Jimmy
right
Henson?
now are viewing the entire collection of these comic books. They were created by Marvel. It was April and May of 1983, written by David Anthony Kraft, art by Brett Blevins and Vince Coletta.
Now, Brett Blevins is the penciler, and Vince was the tracer. I mean, the inker.
It's inker.
Brett actually is pretty well known, I would say. Good artist too. So the art in here is very solid. Definitely looks like the characters.
You definitely see the emotions
from the series.
The emotions are well drawn.
Yeah, and the thing that's kind of interesting is you find a lot of these one run or quick runoffs, as I would just like to call them, when you're dealing in this topic, as I said earlier. And Dark Crystal, of course, was an extraordinarily popular property, and to see them put it into comic book form, I really kind of dug it, So I made sure this was a gift to me, maybe about a decade or so ago from someone.
There's a Bubble Yum ad in here too. Does it even still? I don't know if this thing still exists.
I don't know if Bubble Yum does. I used to love that stuff. It was just sugar. Yeah, because ElfQuest was really popular back in the, I think, was it late 70s, early 80s? Hugely popular series, a fantasy series in comics. So the Dark Crystal Marvel probably wanted to cash in on this. So they thought, well, let's test the waters with the official comic adaptation. And if this does well, then we can do a regular series. Much like they did, I believe, for Micronauts. Wasn't Micronauts a TV series first? And
I believe so.
And then a comic book? So they tested the waters with the comic adaptation. It did so well that they kept going with the series. Another one that I could think of, and if I'm stealing anybody's thunder, I apologize, would be Conan the Barbarian, who was a little bit of both. Granted, they took the comic book, based it off of the movie a little later, took some aspects of it, but earlier the comic book was created first, and then they created the movie based off that loosely. But before that, it was a story written in book form. So that one's even more. There's all these intricacies that you can look at. Tarzan's another one like that.
Oh yeah, of course.
The Phantom and one of our group favorites here, The Shadow, was another one. So stuff like that. So yeah, I could see how they could have taken this Dark Crystal and ran with it. For sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to do one more just brief one-off here, and then I'm going to switch back to you guys, because I do actually have a series that I really like. I'd go into detail, but after letting you guys go on for a little bit, we have 2001: A Space Odyssey, who I believe is carried by perhaps a particular sponsor of the show.
Oh, sorry to interrupt, everyone. Just wanted to mention real quick about a shop in Canoga Park, California called Spiros Heroes. Elliot, the proprietor of the store, has over 300,000 books in what's called the Temple of Comics. That's Spiro Heroes in Canoga Park, spirosheroes.com.
Man, I love that advertisement.
It never, ever, ever gets old.
I was just at Spiros Heroes, and I went in there, and Elliot, the owner of the shop, the godfather of comics, he was like, Donald, you're such a good customer and a supporter of the shop. Here's 17 free comic books. And I was like, Elliot, really?
Did you say 17
free comic books? Yeah.
My God.
Just gave them to me.
You see the love and the just the respect that he has for the show.
Absolutely. A scholar and a gentleman. And speaking of scholars and gentlemen, Kevin, what's next on your list?
Segway indeed. This one is probably one of the most popular adaptations from movies to comics, and that would be Aliens. Dark Horse
did that along with Predator, right?
Yes,
they did them both.
That's right.
Nice.
Yes, outstanding. And yes, definitely a movie first. You don't see this as often in reverse, but this is definitely a movie first.
And hugely popular. And here's the thing, guys. This is what I've talked about forever, how Disney keeps repeatedly fucking Dark Horse comics. They repeatedly keep fucking them. First of all,
another way of doing
they purchased the rights to Lucasfilms. So they got the Star Wars properties and took those back from Dark Horse. Then they purchased the rights to the Conan property and took all the Conan stories and comics away from Dark Horse. Now,
purchasing Fox,
they've acquired the rights to Fox, which owns
Aliens and Predator.
Predators. So what do you think is going to happen next? And those are two huge story series for them. Like, they do a lot of comics based off Aliens and Predator. I just a couple weeks ago bought a Batman versus Predator comic book that I found in a 50-cent bin. And was like, ooh, what a gem.
I think I have that.
Because they're not the easiest books to find. But when you do find them, they're not expensive.
Nope.
No, interesting too. And I'm going to just before you go on, Kevin, I'm going to sit here and just reflect a little bit on the immense talents of H.R. Geiger and Stan Winston.
Yes, who are no longer with us. Very talented gentlemen.
And the creature creators for the Alien and Predator, respectively.
That's right. That's a great point, Darren. I mean, when you look at that H.R. Giger design, it is just literally out of this world. I mean, it's amazing. Like that kind of artwork, like where did that come from? How do you get inspired by that?
You know, people say, oh, they're lobster-like creatures. I'm like, where do you see that?
Where do you see that?
I just don't understand. I think people love to put things in a box and just tell you what you're seeing. But I'm like, no, that is not a lobster-like creature. I'm sorry.
No, not at all. It's a really cool comic for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so Dark Horse obviously had this property. What about the Alien comics really just jump off the page to you, Kevin?
Well, the artwork is just a continuation of the story, essentially. You know, you get to learn a bit more about the xenomorphs, you know, the planet that they come from. Now, of course, Prometheus in movie form, he gets back into that, but just, you know, you learn a bit more. There's more adventures involved against the aliens. You know, you can't go wrong. Dark Horse did a really good job.
Yeah, there's years and years and years of fleshing out stories and characters. Here's what I wonder, though.
What's that?
Since these characters were owned, proprietarily speaking, by Fox, right? All these stories owned by the writers, by Dark Horse, or by the production company?
It's a good question. You have to ask a lawyer on that one.
Right, because if all these stories are owned by the production company, like by Fox, for example, if they were like, oh yeah, we have the right to mine any of these stories, holy shit, did Dark Horse just get raked over the coals?
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Like in each one of these aspects, because they fleshed out the Star Wars universe like nobody else.
Yes, they
like
did.
Nobody else.
And yet now, you can't do anything.
Right, and they didn't do a lot of, I mean, they did some with like Luke and Leia and all that stuff, right? But they were more interested in later on about mining the universe itself and creating and fleshing out all the other stories that could be told about the other knights, the Jedi Knights and stuff. So there's a lot there.
A lot of material.
A lot of material there.
I mean, look here, Donald. You have a book open to one of my childhood memory TV shows I used to watch.
Oh, yeah, and it comes with a Mark Jewelers advertisement. I don't know. People lose their nut off this Mark Jewelers thing. You'd have to be like a hardcore comic book collector to know what the hell I'm talking about. But, like, yeah, they lose their nut over this. But the comic book that Darren is drooling over here is Lancelot Link, Secret Chimp. I shit you not.
We love simians on this show.
On the cover it says it's teepee time when Chump gets rain on the brain.
You know, he's a well-dressed chimp.
He is. And here's some things I did not know about Lancelot Link is that it was originally aired on ABC in the 1970s. It started in 1970, actually. It was a Saturday morning live-action film series that featured a cast of chimpanzees given apparent speaking roles by overdubbing with human voices.
Oh, it's amazing. Trust me.
They had, here's the best, they had a 7-figure budget.
7-figure?
7-figure budget with location filming, props, and costumes, and the laborious staging and training of the animals. The filmmakers made the most of the budget, staging multiple episodes with the same settings and wardrobe, occasionally reusing the more elaborate chase footage. So it's interesting that this even came to be as a series, let alone then they thought that this was right for a comic book, which was picked up by Whitman. If anybody knows Whitman.
I do want to elaborate on this 7-figure budget. For those of you who watch large network television shows, I mean, now almost all of them have 7-figure budgets. But I mean, for the 1970s, this is absolutely unheard of. I promise you that.
That's huge. Yeah, it was a big thing. And it was on for what? From 70 to 72, I think. So it was on for two seasons at least, if not 3. But it's well drawn here. It's got it's got your traditional 70s style framing as far as the comic book itself. So it's very, back and forth, left to right, up and down, But each, and there's little mini stories in here about the chimps and stuff and the detective chimp Lancelot and how he figures things out and stuff. So it's pretty cool.
Oh, the overdubbing is classic. It's a total product of its time, and it was very ambitious. I mean, it was interesting. I don't know how this stuff, like, you must all think out there in the world that we're obsessed with chimps. I was watching a George Romero film today called Monkey Shines.
Oh, I've heard of that one.
Yeah.
It's like this whole idea that we wanted to make monkeys look cool on the screen. It just still hasn't worked. I'm sorry.
Why not?
So you're saying it's a little different cousin, Planet of the Apes.
Well, Planet of the Apes doesn't really have that many real apes. If you really get that, a lot of them are in costume.
Yeah, that's true.
Especially if you're going to go in the original series.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is
Yeah.
a parallel for... That's another show.
Everybody was in costume.
Yeah.
Everyone. Darren, you got another one?
I have one I'd like to spend a little time on. That would
Okay.
be RoboCop versus the Terminator.
Ah, yes, a classic.
Now, here's the thing that's interesting to me is when you see the movies that get translated into comic books, there's a ton of crossover. I mean, I never got much into it, especially on the video game end, but the way that Aliens versus Predator kind of changed the video gaming landscape was just so impressive, because it's like, I don't remember as a kid the thought of crossing over major characters like this, at least, which you can see in a video game, through a comic book and stuff. This was the first time it really kind of jumped out at me. What's kind of funny is both of them are not... They're animalistic more than anything else. Like, they're not Rhodes Scholars, so it's kind of fascinating to me. But let's go with RoboCop versus Terminator. This is Dark Horse, 1992, written by Frank Miller. Art is by Walt Simonson.
Frank Miller, great artist for his time, great storyteller. Real quick to interject, Terminator, also very important to the comic book world because it introduced us to Alex Ross. Alex Ross's
Correct.
first work was Terminator: The Burning Earth #1.
Funny, I think I have that book
And
too.
yeah, everyone should if they don't. It's from Now Comics that produced that one.
Right, and both these characters, by the way, were movie characters that became comics. So Frank was coming off a 9-issue run of RoboCop. It was published by Avatar Press. I met Frank Miller one time, guys. Did I ever tell you that?
No, you didn't.
No.
What was it like?
We were up at working at our old movie theater job, and I was running an event for Sin City. And I went up to his lawyer, and I were basically in talks, throughout the whole evening, just making sure everything was arranged properly and so on and so forth. And I said, hey, he said, could you go grab one of these special edition DVD sets? I said, yeah, if you want, sure. So I go up and grab it, and he's like, oh, thanks for Frank. Actually, why don't you go give it to Frank? I'm like, all right. So I went over, shook his hand. He was very quiet, very reserved guy. But, I thought it was just like a really neat instance to meet such a great, comic book artist.
And also,
as far as writing goes.
Pray that he gets better. I hear he's not doing too well
He
health-wise.
hasn't been doing well for what looks like quite a while, but
Yeah.
he's been hanging in there.
Yeah.
Now, let's think about this. Is a great blend of stories here and mythos to these. Okay. The storyline here is Skynet sends 3 Terminators back in time to Detroit to protect a turmoiled RoboCop from a human soldier who's been sent back to destroy him. Now, of course, you have to ask the question right away. Why in the world would the Terminators be protecting RoboCop? Well, RoboCop finds out that the tech that was used to build him is partially responsible for the development of Skynet,
Oh, interesting.
which I find very intriguing. And what's kind of funny is RoboCop, when he figures this out, future RoboCop is currently trying to take down Skynet in the future, which where a lot of this comic book takes place is in the future, while the lone soldier is trying to destroy him in the past. There's a good conundrum here. So what it comes down to that I really dig about this is like the artwork to me, it's not like Picasso, but it's effective. It's very cool. Like it's got a very clear direction that it wants to go. And I kind of like it. And it's very early 90s, late 80s. Like, there's a distinctive style of art that comes out
I
of that
wish they
period.
would have made that like into a movie. The Alien versus Predator. That was a big fan favorite. People were waiting for that for years, and we got it. That got 2 movies. But it would be cool if they did a Terminator versus RoboCop. That would have been so awesome.
Yes, absolutely.
Peter Weller versus Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, my gosh. Oh,
It doesn't have to be Peter Weller either. I'm okay with anybody else too.
Kevin, what other interesting books?
I mean, let's be honest. Peter Weller has made it very clear he doesn't want to talk about RoboCop, let alone be him again. And I don't blame him. He looks too old for the part. I think there's too many bottles of whiskey that have been involved for him to look as spring fling, so to speak, as he was with RoboCop.
Well, I
in the
sent him a
90s or
voice
the 80s.
message the other day. It was really quite simple. And I said, Peter, dead or alive, you're coming with me.
I'm sure he appreciated it.
Sure he
Absolutely.
did too.
So, the next one I have is Masters of the Universe.
Ooh, that was not a book first? Was it a cartoon or and a toy line first, or was it?
It's kind of funny. I was looking this up. They all kind of came out generally around the same time. So it's almost like there was some early synergy going on between the toy line, the comic book, and the cartoon show.
Well, and the film was in 1987, which obviously,
Yes,
correct me if I'm wrong, it's a little
bit
later.
later. A little bit later.
All right.
I was going with the cartoon-wise.
Okay, of course. Very popular cartoon.
Very popular. And for those who are hunters, we have a friend of ours at Spiros Heroes who wanted this book so badly. It's DC Comics Presents number 47.
Who wanted it really badly?
What's the young lady?
We don't like to call people out by name.
Oh, she did?
Yeah.
Really? Huh.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe damn.
And she got it, too.
Did she? Well, good for her.
I feel like this is an appearance of She-Ra, maybe?
No. He-Man.
Oh, that's a He-Man. Okay.
Now, there is one for She-Ra, too. That's a little bit later, but just like their Masters Universe and He-Man. It was DC Comics Presents number 47. It's kind of like a little hidden hot issue that collectors do hunt down.
Yeah, particularly because they've announced that there is going to be another movie.
Yes.
And they're going to be working on that. And
Yes.
if that does well, it could build a franchise series that could just explode.
Man, why do they keep remaking great movies? I mean, that Courtney Cox movie, The Go-Go Boys, my favorite Cargo goes, find them!
Yes, the best. Oh my God. Some of those characters were so amazing. And the fact that they couldn't do Orko,
I know, that pissed me off.
I loved it.
I love Orko.
But the young Courtney Cox, I'm sorry. It's just, I don't know. Go ahead.
We couldn't have got the characters that we got in that movie if I mean, that movie was a perfect storm of nonsense. And those that are listening right now, if you go all the way to the end of the credits, after the credits, there is a special scene. There is a special scene.
What is it?
I had no idea. Well, I'm not going to spoil it for the people listening, just in
Nor
case.
am I.
But you definitely need to watch after the credits. There's an awesome little thing that takes place.
I do have the DVD. I thought it would be worth collecting, but then I just realized it's an awesome movie.
You know,
With a synthesized keyboard.
Yep.
You know what's sad? The same year that Masters of the Universe came out, which was also a canon film, Superman 4: The Quest for Peace came out.
And so did Predator.
Well, canon didn't do Predator.
No, Canon didn't do Predator. You're correct.
But yes, you're right. Predator did come out the same year.
See, we have some alliterations here. We have some things that match up perfectly. Donald, this stack is enormous. I feel like we should give you the floor for a little bit here.
All right, I'm going to just name off a few books here and hammer them out. This is a great segue for that, if you're looking at this pile. When I say hammer them out, I'm talking about Sledgehammer.
Was it like a TV show on NBC?
Was a TV show. This is done by Marvel Comics, though. This is based off the television show. It's Sledgehammer #1.
Ooh.
It's great. He's standing there with a big gun in his bright outfit, and there's two girls in the background. One looks like some type of horror lady, and the other one, I said horror, and the other one looks like a secretary of some sort with a gun.
Because she's a
I don't know. And it says
Sledgehammer.
It is based on the Sledgehammer television series. The characters created by Alan Spencer. Sledge says, "Trust me, I know what I'm doing." Surrounded by monsters. And it says, guest starring Satana with a question mark. And it says at the bottom, with an exclamation point, Creep House.
Man, check out that jacket and that tie he's wearing.
Right? It's amazing. Basic synopsis of this is Sledge finds himself playing glorified security guard to a campy TV horror host patterned after Marvel's Satana, the daughter of Satan. 36 pages, full color, $1, guys. What a steal. I paid half that.
If they ever turn it into a full feature length film, full feature length film,
Yeah.
you're going to make some money
I
off
think
this.
Sledgehammer would be, like, if they were going to redo a television series, this would be the one. Like, it's up there on my list pretty high.
More so than MacGyver?
What more so, MacGyver just got redone.
And it's not working.
Oh.
Yeah, CBS again, but same guy that redid Hawaii 5-0 and now Magnum PI.
Okay.
Oh.
And I hope they all fail.
Oh.
What are you talking about? Is it Belisario? Because Belisario did the original Magnum PI. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I'm all over the place. Speaking
Sorry,
of something
I didn't mean to distract you with this.
Never get remade, this is definitely something for the 90s and the 90s only.
It's a 4-issue miniseries called Viper. Viper that was done for television twice.
What?
It was done for NBC, if I recall, first.
Okay.
With a different lead, and then later in syndication with another lead. Strangest thing. It was just like, oh, this isn't working for NBC. Well, we'll pick it up for syndication. It was so odd. And it worked for me in both ways because it was just really weird. And they were just advertising a car.
And correct me if I'm wrong, the series lasted about as long as the car.
Yeah, pretty much. Once the car died off, the series was gone.
I remember it was...
Nobody had any interest.
They advertised the hell out of that car, too, and it just was a giant fail for the longevity, of course.
Yeah. Another stack in my stack here, the Ren and Stimpy Show.
Mm-hmm.
This one has a scratch and sniff cover. So, well, actually, it's more like free air Fowler enclosed, which will smell up everything. So, whatever there.
Is that Spawn?
That is Spawn. This is Mars Attacks Image. Mars Attacks was created by, it was originally, it wasn't Tim Burton, but Tim Burton made it popular. But it was created in, I think it was in the 50s, if I'm correct.
Makes sense.
War Against the Worlds kind of brought that into popularity about Mars attacking on Martians and things like that. And then they created the movie with Tim Burton, and then they took that idea and put it into Image Comics. And they did a nice small issue run where we have all kinds of characters. We have the Savage Dragon.
Yeah, I see him right here.
We have some characters from Wildcats, Ripclaw, the Max, Spawn, Gen 13. You name it, they're in here. This was the name-all, be-all of Image Comics fighting aliens. So it was a really cool little idea. Another one here that I have that my mom would be proud of, Babylon 5.
Great television series.
Right. Basically like what they tried to make it a highbrow Star Trek, in other words. But a little different.
Yeah, I was more of a Deep Space Nine guy for what it's worth, but, you know. It's just
right.
kind of
Yeah, and this was written by J. Michael Straczynski.
Oh, yes.
Who he did the Sense 8 run for the Netflix for their series, which was like, what, 2 seasons in a small like Christmas special or something. Also of course I have that Batman versus Predator I talked about earlier.
Very cool.
Also Elvira's House of Mystery.
Ooh.
They basically took Elvira, who is a kind of a late night movie host, so to speak.
Cassandra Peterson.
Right. And she's so lovely. And she still looks amazing
I don't have a
now.
signed poster.
And I know that sounds terribly sexist, and I apologize for that.
No, you're just.
But just Google her, and
complimenting
everybody
her.
will understand.
You're complimenting her.
Want to know how the West was really won?
Apparently by her with a gun. And a cactus with a cowboy hat. And then the last one I have in my stack is Grimm. For those of you who don't remember the NBC series, Grimm was put out into comic book form by Dynamite Comics. So those are all the comic books that I have, and a lot that we've talked about. But we want to kind of segue a little bit real quick and change everything, put it on its ear, so to speak. The idea was that we wanted to discuss things that we think would be excellent comic book properties that currently are not.
Yes,
Am I
absolutely.
correct?
Yeah, well, yeah, basically. I have one that is and one that isn't. So, a movie that inspired a handful of comic books, Highlander. Highlander is perfectly made to be a comic book. They're
Yeah,
immortals.
I think that was Dynamite Comics as well.
It could have been, but that's one that it's never had like a run series, but I mean, that's just so tailor-made to me. I mean, you have sword fighting in outer space, beheading people, otherwise you're immortal. That's one very interesting one. Now, to me, this is something that should become a comic property, if it is not already, and you guys are the encyclopedia, you could tell me. I want to do a comic book called Mills. It's going to be based on Brian Mills from Taken.
Oh.
I think this would have a long run, because you saw even in those 3 films that between Albanians, Russian gangsters, whatever, you name it, he could always find evil in the world.
Well, they did what? Was it 1 season or 2 seasons on, I think CBS did Taken, like a television series.
Wow, it went over my head. I don't recall that one.
Yeah, they did that, and I think you can find it on Netflix currently.
Yeah, but I think this would be a great comic book because, in essence, the guy is a mortal Superman in many respects. I mean, how did he survive in those movies, let alone put him in a comic book series and always fighting evil? And he's a broken guy, but he's very likable too. And if you really want to cross him over, one of my other favorite guys is Beck from The Rundown. I would love to see Mills and Beck, my 2 modern-day supermen who are mortal individuals. Kevin, do you have any thoughts on things that you'd like to see?
The Westworld TV show made into a comic book. I would love to see that. That'd be really cool.
How do you think they tackle
And that's something,
that?
interestingly enough, Dark Horse, if they can get their hands on that, I think that can help them out. They can expand upon the story of the host and all the different parks.
Yeah, I can't remember who had the property for Game of Thrones. What company? I want to say it was Dynamite.
Yeah, I think so. Dynamite or IDW? One
Yeah,
of those.
it was either IDW or Dynamite. They might be more likely to get that property because they've done a deal before. But yeah, I mean, Dark Horse, if they want to get serious, definitely.
Yeah, and there was a cool like comic book that came out in 2017 as well. it just came to mind. John Wick became a comic book.
That makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He's perfectly tailor-made for this. Donald, do you have any thoughts on what you'd like to see that's a nice property that can be put into the comic book world?
Absolutely. Now, mine's going to be a little bit of an unknown first. So basically, I think that the idea for a series based on Dark, which is a German language Netflix original series.
Okay.
Basically, the premise is children start disappearing from a fictional German town, bringing to light the fractured relationships, double lives, and dark past of the 4 families living there, and revealing a mystery that spans 3 generations. It basically then involves kind of like a time travel situation. So we get a story told by various different actors in different circumstances. So it could be very well done. It's very creepy. I say it's like the German Stranger Things in a way.
Okay.
German's time travel Stranger Things is what I would call it. So it's a really cool concept, a very cool idea. The other one that might be more well known, simply because of the actors involved, one of them being Ed Begley Jr. and the other Josh Hutcherson.
Okay.
Of
Future Man.
Exactly. That's the series I'm talking about.
Right.
Future Man. I think that would make a great comic book. A comedy comic book about a man that plays a video game, ends up beating the game, and in which case calls forth these time traveler heroes from the future that need him to help them destroy these evil mutant things that are coming in the future that are created by a scientist that this kid works for at a lab as a janitor. So it's ripe for comedy, for action, for all kinds of adventures. We've seen how, in the comic book community, how well Army of Darkness has taken off as far as all the adventures he's done in every place he's gone. Future Man is next up for that. And I strongly believe that with the power behind it, and we're talking Evan Goldberg and Seth Rogen, Seth Rogen having produced also Preacher,
Yes.
Which is a Vertigo Comics property, that Future Man isn't far off from becoming a comic book if they're not already in talks about it.
Yeah, it's just that the merchandising model has changed so much over the years. These books were a lot easier to move in the 80s and 90s, but, in today's, what you see a lot of people printing them, but the books just don't move the way they used to.
Right, that's right.
So, guys, this was great talking about this stuff. Having movies that can come to comic books. Is there any thoughts you want to leave anybody with?
Well, I got one more I just want to throw in real quick. Jason Bourne comics.
Oh,
The Adventures of Jason Bourne.
Okay, if we go with the basis of the first movie, I'm not a fan of the second or the third.
Really?
They sucked ass so bad.
You're one of the very few
And then
people
what
to
was
say
there, a
that.
fourth and a fifth, and they were terrible?
Well, the last 2 actually were terrible.
Good
yes.
Lord and gravy. No thank you. That Paul Greengrass style of filming can suck a fuck. I'm sorry.
I know, we've had that
That
conversation.
shit made me dizzy in the movie theater.
You see, I know what your problem is with Paul Greengrass. A lot of people have copied him and copied that style.
Well, it's not just the style, it's the storytelling itself that really threw me off. I felt that, what was it, Linklater?
Richard Linklater.
Yeah.
Who did what?
Did the first...
Doug Liman.
Was it Doug Liman?
Yeah, Doug Liman.
Okay, Doug Liman, sorry. So it was Doug Liman that did the first Jason Bourne.
Bourne Identity.
Bourne Identity, yeah. Mm-hmm. And I just felt it had a certain je ne sais quoi to it. It had it just ran like it was a comic, because when it introduced the people that were coming after them,
Especially Clive Owen.
after him, it showed them like in their element and what they were going to do.
Right.
It was very visual, like a comic book is. It was very storytelling, like a comic book is. So that worked very well for me. The other movies just did not. It was just all like, let's just talk about it and not show anything. And they would just talk and talk and talk, and then they would show action, but you couldn't see it. It's so blurry, and it just didn't. It did not work. So if they find a way to get that to work, great. But like if it's based off the idea of the first movie, with introducing these characters coming after him and like a little bit of their backstory and shit, I'm on board.
Well, yeah, if you're taking the idea that he's just a mind-controlled, assassin.
What are you staring at me for, Kevin?
Kevin, I really like Bourne Supremacy. I'm just going to put that out there. That's why you have every right to stare at him.
Bourne Supremacy?
Part 2.
The second one.
It's called Bourne Bullshit.
Oh, wow.
Born to be bullshit.
You know what? If I had Paul Greengrass on the show right now, I would have him smack you across the face.
Already have slapped him.
He'd be.
Rule of thumb is you attack first.
He'd be spitting through his mouth at you in his very thick Irish accent.
Exactly. He's one of your peoples, and yet you insult him.
Yeah, that's fine. That's what we do every day, me and my people. We insult each other and slap the shit out of each other.
Wait. You get people? I don't have any people.
Yeah, I've got people.
You have people?
He's got people.
Definitely got people.
Okay, well,
Special people.
Guys, thank you so much for listening. Of course.
Yes.
My name is Darren.
My name is Dr. Kevin, and if you be so kind, please subscribe. Please tune in to us on iTunes,
Yes.
YouTube.
And we have a new exciting announcement. We will be on Google Play Music as you're listening to this pod.
Ooh.
So we are now available on another platform that you can listen to us on. Very exciting.
So therefore, you Android users have no excuses.
No excuses. Find us. Love us. Reach out to us. Again, my name is Donald, and maybe at some point in time you'll see us and we'll see you
at the comic shop.
This has been The Real Short Box. We'll see you at the comic shop. Thanks for listening.